is under the spell of material nature and false ego, identifying his body as the self. He becomes absorbed in material activities, and by the influence of false ego, he thinks that he is the proprietor of everything. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Actually, the conditioned soul is forced to act under the pressure of the modes of material nature. The living entity has no independence. When he is under the direction of the Supreme Personality Godhead, he is free. But when under the impression that he is satisfying his senses, he engages in sense gratificatory activities. He is actually under the spell of material nature. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said, Prakrite Kriyamanani. One acts according to the particular modes of nature he has acquired. Guna refers to the qualities of nature. He is under the qualities of nature, but he falsely thinks that he is the proprietor. This false sense of proprietorship can be avoided simply by engaging oneself in devotional service under the direction of the Supreme Lord or his bona fide representative. Arjuna, in Bhagavad Gita, was trying to accept for himself the responsibility for killing his grandfather and teacher in the fight. But he became freed from the proprietorship of action when he acted under the direction of Krishna. He fought, but he was actually freed from the reactions of fighting, although in the beginning, when he was nonviolent, unwilling to fight, the entire responsibility was upon him. That is a difference between liberation and conditioning. A conditioned soul may be very good and act in the mode of goodness, but still he is conditioned under the spell of material nature. A devotee, however, acts completely under the direction of the Supreme Lord. Thus, his actions may not appear to be of a very high quality to the common man, but the devotee has no responsibility. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So this verse, Canto 3, chapter 27, says, when the soul is under the spell of material nature and false ego, identifying his body as the self, he becomes absorbed in material activities. And by the influence of false ego, he thinks that he is the proprietor of everything. Okay, so how do we identify ourselves? Well, if we identify ourselves as the body, we are completely in Maya. But if we identify ourselves as the eternal servant of Krishna and understand that nothing belongs to me, everything belongs to the Lord, so I should use everything in the service of the Lord. What does that mean exactly? Well, in practical terms, if you think, or if one thinks everything belongs to the Supreme Personality Godhead of Krishna, then the devotee will use everything in the service of Krishna or dovetail everything in the service of Krishna. So he might be very, very rich, or he might be very, very poor, or he might be in the middle, not too rich and not poor. But whatever he has, he uses in the service of Krishna. So this, and by the way, when a person does use everything in their life in the service of Krishna, then in some mysterious way they experience unlimited, uh, what you would call unlimited benedictions by the Lord. So uh, people have these uh, periods in their life where, without hardly doing anything, they attain riches, and it's because of their previous karma. But in the case of genuine devotee, it's not necessarily the case of karma. It's the fact that they are engaged in Krishna consciousness without any material, let's say, desires. Then Krishna gives unlimited opulence to the devotee, knowing well that the devotee will use that opulence only in the service of Krishna. So the example is Srila Prabhupada. He comes to the United States with $7 in his pocket. And in a short period of time, well, let's say, for 1 year, he didn't make much, he hardly made any devotees. But after 1 year, he started to make some devotees. And after 2, 3 years, there was the Hare Krishna explosion. So, but Prabhupada came with only $7 in his pocket. And all he did was sit down in someplace uh, and chant Hare Krishna. And he says that. He said, in the beginning, all I did was chant Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. He was chanting with his kartals, and some people came and they liked the chanting and they started dancing. Now you see, this dancing is very important. So there are video tapes of and Prabhupada in the beginning of his preaching in America, just sitting down uh, in Tompkins Square and chanting Hare Krishna. And there were all these young kids, uh, you might call them hippies. They were chanting and dancing, and some were playing flutes, and others have drums, and some were playing saxophone, and it was like a lot of fun for the devotees. Well, they weren't devotees; they were just kids or hippies. And hippies, Prabhupada said, "I've come to make the hippies into happies." So they became happy by chanting and dancing. And he said, in the beginning, all I did was chant Hare Krishna. So this pure chanting of Hare Krishna means that Krishna is going to help the devotee in every way to uh, uh, engage others in chanting and dancing and taking prasadam. That's our program. We chant, we dance, we take prasadam. And in that way, all good things begin to happen. So that should be our, let's say, uh, our conviction that if we simply chant and dance purely and take prasadam nicely, everything will change in our life from misery to happiness, from confusion to determination to always serve Krishna. So we should take it very seriously that this chanting and dancing is the real cultural way to attain love of God or love of Krishna. Okay, uh, so this verse today is saying that when the soul is under the spell of material nature and false ego, identifying his body as the self, he becomes absorbed in material activities, and by the influence of false ego, he thinks that he is the proprietor of everything. Okay, so this spell of material nature and false ego, identifying one's body as the self, that is the condition of probably 98, maybe 99% of all living entities today, human beings today. Not the dogs and cats, because they're completely controlled by illusion, but human beings, uh, they identify with the body, they develop false ego by identifying the body as the self, and they become absorbed in material activities. And because of false ego, one thinks that he is the proprietor of everything. This is dangerous, let's say, uh, uh, fall down into the illusory worlds. Uh, so in the purport, it says, actually, the conditioned soul is forced to act under the pressure of the modes of material nature. Most people would say, oh, no, 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 I don't believe this. I'm in control of myself. No. And people, almost the whole population is in a state of illusion and being controlled by to force to act under the pressure of the modes of material nature. And here Prabhupada clearly says, he says, the living entity has no independence. Well, how can we understand that? Well, we're forced to do things. We're forced to sleep. We're forced to wake up. We're forced to, pass school. We're forced to work. We're forced to do so many different things in our life. And it doesn't matter whether we're very rich or we're very poor. Uh, Most of the things that we do in our life, we're forced to do it. why? Why force? Why something? Everything we do in our life, we're forced to do it. Now, when we act in Krishna consciousness, that is a conscious decision to act only to please Krishna. At that point, we're not forced. It's that's a person. We are acting in our constitutional position as the devotee of the Lord. But when we're just acting as the owner, proprietor, as the enjoyer, uh, then we're actually being forced. And because of that, we develop a lot of karma, and we are, let's say, ignorant, without in a hopeless situation. And we see that often, that most people are in a hopeless situation. They're not really happy. They're living day to day, but they are, questioning themselves. Why am I doing this? I don't really enjoy this. I'm stuck in some, let's say, dead end in life, and that's why you have bars where people are going every day and drinking liquor, or you have other places where people are going and smoking marijuana because they're stuck. They're confused. They are trying to mitigate their misery by taking intoxicants and trying to engage in sense gratification because they think that's the only real happiness in their life. That is also complete illusion. And most people, unfortunately, are in that vicious downward spiral in life, and they know there's something wrong, but they don't know anything else in their life, and therefore they just get more and more frustrated. They take drugs, and sometimes they commit suicide. Uh, Young kids also, or I mean teenagers, uh, not often, but there are examples of young kids who commit suicide because they're very frustrated and they don't see how they can be happy in this material world. So they commit suicide. Sometimes they have a friend and they both commit suicide together. It doesn't happen every day, but let's say every month it happens where that a young uh, let's say young person will commit suicide because of their very severe frustrations in life. That's because they don't have any relationship with Krishna. They're completely ignorant. So therefore it says, actually the conditioned soul is forced to act under the pressure of the modes of material nature. Well, the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance are controlling the activities of people who are in ignorance. How can one rise above the influence of the modes of material nature? Well, the first major step a person would have to take to begin to free themselves from the modes of material nature is to accept a bona fide spiritual master and be educated by the spiritual master in how to be Krishna conscious. So this is what Prabhupada did. He came and he started training uh, people. Most of them were young people. How to engage their senses in Krishna consciousness instead of engaging their senses in sense gratification. The senses are always going to be there, but either they're going to be purified by sense gratification or contaminated by sense. I'm sorry, either they're going to be uh, purified by Krishna consciousness or contaminated by sense gratification. Now, when you sleep, when you eat, when you take a bath, that's a type of sense gratification. But if it's done in the process of Krishna consciousness, it's no longer considered something negative. But if the same thing is done with the desire for sense gratification, then it's very negative, and one gets trapped in the cycle of birth and death. So to understand these things, one definitely needs to associate with devotees and eventually even take uh, initiation to continually act in Krishna consciousness. The process of initiation is very important uh, for all people in this life because then they have a responsibility to follow Krishna consciousness. They make a vow: no meat eating, no gambling, no illicit sex, no intoxication, etc., and always chanting Hare Krishna. That's why it says here, actually, the conditioned soul is forced to act under the pressure of the modes of material nature. The living entity has no independence. Now, most people would argue against that. The living entity has no independence. However, it's the fact, it's true. It's only when you surrender to Krishna that you become free from Maya, and especially if you seriously follow Krishna consciousness. So this seems to be an oxymoron. I looked that word up, oxymoron. uh, how can you be free if you surrender? Well, it depends who you surrender to. If you surrender to a nonsense person, you're not free. But if you surrender to Krishna, you become free, free from sense gratification, free from illusion, and free from uh, wasting your time in mundane activities. What does it say?
Figure of speech in which apparently contradictory terms appear in conjunction.
A figure of speech that combines two contradictory words or phrases to create a new meaning.
That's an oxymoron, right? So two contradictory things seem to what?
To make a phrase,
Seem to what?
A figure of speech that combines two contradictory words or phrases to create a new meaning.
Right. So, do they give examples?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Unfaithful kept him falsely. Faith unfaithful kept him falsely true.
Any other example? Well, anyway, you put two opposites together, and you come up with a and an oxymoron means
bittersweet.
Yeah, bittersweet, things like that.
Deafening silence. Virtual reality.
That's another one.
Organized chaos.
Huh?
Organized chaos.
Yeah, one time I took a taxi in India, and the taxi driver told me that yes, India is organized chaos. And it is because sometimes you only have you have or they used to, maybe not anymore, but they used to have roads that were one way roads, but there was two-way traffic. Yeah. So that was always very frightful when you get in a taxi and it's a one-way road, but there's two-way traffic going on.
There's a mutual understanding, where people understand and they just drive. They know traffic will come from other side, but they continue to drive.
Somehow it works. It used to work, but people would have accidents though. A lot
It's
of
very
them.
risky, man. Like slight mistake, like
Yeah.
very slight.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
When I first came to India and started taking taxis, it was like scary, very scary. The taxi drivers seemed to know what they were doing,
Yes.
but most of them would be chewing charas or marijuana.
Tobacco is very common.
Yeah, so they get high on that, and they drive, and somehow or other, uh, they would just by inches miss having a accident. Yeah, very dangerous. Or these big buses driving very fast,
Dancing.
yeah, and you're trying to cross the road, and the bus comes like a few inches going really fast, So that was the first thing I learned when I went to India, that you could die at any moment. It's just was the nature of that place. Okay. All right. So when the soul is under the spell of material nature and false ego, identifying his body as the self, he becomes absorbed in material activities. And by the influence of false ego, he thinks that he is the proprietor of everything. Well, this is a very important verse. And if we want to be free of illusion, then we have to pay attention to this verse. It explains how the living entity falls into a state of complete illusion. And everything they do is basically for sense gratification. And therefore, ultimately, they get very frustrated. Now, why are there so many bars where people go and drink liquor? And for some people, it's every day. Instead of drinking milk, they drink all kinds of different liquors, and they go to parties where everyone is drinking and champagne. Um, I remember when I was a kid, and on New Year's Eve, we would go to this big New Year's Eve party, uh, families. So they would start with a dinner. So everyone would be nicely dressed and just talking, coherently and sitting down at a whole bunch of different tables. And there would be the family, well, let's be the ethnic uh, uh, New Year's Eve party where could be 1,000 people and everybody's sitting down nicely dressed. Then, little by little, after they would finish eating meat and all kinds of things and beginning to drink liquor, they would start to dance. And after some time, some people would be throwing up and vomiting because they ate too much or they drank too much. Other people would be fighting. Some people would be taken to the hospital. Uh, so in the beginning, it looked like everyone was in really good condition. By the end of the day, some people had been taken to the hospital. Other people got into fights, all because they all got drunk and started fighting with each other. You know, so I was a little kid, but I would just I wasn't drinking any liquor or anything like that, but I was witnessing this, and I was thinking to myself, wow, this is not real happiness. This is misery. You know, when you see a person throwing up because they drank too much liquor, and uh, there was this one guy, and he's a relative of mine, and there was an old gentleman who was a very nice gentleman, right? And my relative, he got so overwhelmed with, I don't know, liquor that he grabbed this older gentleman and started whistling and chanting and picked him up with his arms and squeezing his chest and broke his ribs. So his ecstasy turned into a tragedy, and they had to take the man to the hospital. And he was an older gentleman. So these types of things happen when people are under the influence of drugs. So alcohol is a drug. It's not. It's not something that we should take. And marijuana is a drug. And so when people are drugged, they do things that normally they would never do. And that's why it's so dangerous. Yeah, one time I saw this one person who was very highly drugged on uh, uh, LSD, and they accidentally put their hand on a hot plate, right? But they didn't take it off. They were so drugged they just kept it there. And then you can see the smoke coming up from their hand, and gradually, slowly, they took their hand away. But then they had to go to hospital. They were severely burned. But they didn't take their hand away right away. They just kept it there because they were so drugged. It's like horrible things to see, and even more horrible to experience. Therefore, taking drugs is very dangerous. one should not do it. Now, today there are designer drugs. Previously, there's alcohol, things like that. Now you have designer drugs. You have LSD and other types of intoxicating, like fentanyl and other things like that. They're extremely dangerous because they're cheap. They're just like a little pill, and you can easily buy it. And if you overdose by being not attentive, you can die. Fentanyl can kill you very easily. And a lot of people are dying. Look up how many people die of fentanyl intoxication. And because fentanyl is a little pill and it's relatively very cheap, and a lot of, let's say, a lot of people take it because it gives you a very strong high or illusion, and it's very addictive. So what does it say? Fentanyl. Yeah.
Death involving
Synthetic.
synthetic then methadone. Primary illicit manufactured fentanyl continued to rise with 73,838 overdose deaths reported in 2022.
It's in the thousands.
Yeah.
73,000. Yeah.
828.
And what year was that?
2022.
Yeah. Yeah, you'd be surprised how many people take it because it's very gives you a real fast intoxication, and it's cheap, and you can easily buy it. It's being sold all over the place. And if you go downtown Seattle, you can definitely find people selling it, and people are hooked on it. It's very, very let's see, dangerous drug because it's a little pill and it's very cheap, and it gives you a very quick intoxication.
It's 100 times more powerful than morphine.
Yeah, so that means it's serious. You shouldn't play around with it. And they sell it sometimes outside of schools, high schools, and the kids are buying it because it's not expensive, very cheap. Okay, so yes,
As of December 2024, data on fentanyl-related overdose deaths in the U.S. is still being compiled.
I didn't understand. Say that
So
again.
they don't know this year. They still don't know how many fentanyl deaths
Oh, okay,
there are,
okay.
meaning it's a really big number or a small number, or they still didn't calculate it.
But we know previous years. Yeah. So what was it? 2 years ago.
78,838.
Wow, that's a lot of human beings. You could fill a baseball. What do you call it? You could fill a stadium with that many people. Yes.
And then in 2023, it increased by an estimated 107,543 drug overdose deaths, marking a 3% decline from 2022's total of 111,029 deaths. So
Well,
there's less deaths.
yeah. Well, we should stay away from those drugs. Very dangerous. But they're very easy to get and they're very cheap. That's what makes them popular with unfortunate young kids. Okay, so the statement in the purport that actually the conditioned soul is forced to act under the pressure of the modes of material nature is something that most people don't understand. And then the next statement Prabhupada makes is the living entity has no independence. That would that's a statement that almost nobody would agree to. They would all say, I'm independent, I'm free. So then it says, when the living entity is under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is free. Now, that seems to be an oxymoron. When you're under the direction of the Personality of Godhead, you're free. So most people would say, how can you be free if you're under the direction, or say under the control of someone? Well, it depends who that someone is. If you're under the direction of a genuine devotee, that means that you're being controlled, but you're actually free. Free from uh, illicit sex, gambling, meat eating, intoxication, illusion, and so forth. So it seems to be an oxymoron. If you're controlled by someone, how can you be free? Well, if that someone is a devotee, yes, you can be free of all bad habits and avoid a lot of misery in life. So uh, it depends who you surrender to. Everyone is surrendered to something or someone. And if you surrender to the right person, like a bona fide spiritual master, you're no longer a victim. You're no longer controlled by the laws of material nature. So it seems to be um, a, a contradictory thing. How can you be free by surrender? Well, it depends who you surrender to. If you surrender to someone like Srila Prabhupada, you become free of all bad habits. And now you become a person who can help other people also. There's a saying, uh, uh, if you have never crossed the bridge, then you can't help others to cross the bridge. But if you cross a bridge, then you can help others cross a bridge. So when we are not properly educated, then we don't know how to get free of Maya. But when we're properly educated in Krishna consciousness, we can free ourselves from the grip of Maya, or the illusory grip of Maya. So it's very easy when one is not educated properly to be tricked by Maya and then engage in all kinds of activities that are let's say, destructive. Just like, there are some kids, they like to chew their fingernails. Have you ever seen anyone like that?
Adults also.
Huh?
Yes.
Yeah, adults. That's a very bad habit. Why would they chew their fingernail? Because, I don't know, they're nervous. You can't say they're hungry, but it's a bad habit that some people learn. Uh, and kids learn it too. So unless they have a good parent, or unless they're in the association of good devotees, they can continue that bad habit for a long time. And then they can advance to, instead of chewing their nails, they'll start chewing tobacco. That's like the worst thing you can do. Chewing tobacco is guaranteed cancer. But there are people that chew tobacco, and if it's a slow cancer, you don't die right away, but you do get the intoxication right away of chewing tobacco. And that's why people have chew tobacco, because they get slowly but surely intoxicated. It's not a, let's say, right away intoxication. It's a slow intoxication that makes people feel good, but ultimately it'll cause cancer if we keep chewing tobacco. So, therefore, we should. Uh, well, they sell chewing tobacco in stores. You can buy them. It's not a, although it's a drug, still they sell it openly in I don't know. You see it uh, in supermarkets, chewing tobacco.
Here, Maharaj?
Huh?
Here?
Yeah.
In India, it is available.
No, I think there is specific stores, right? Or
Mm. I think they usually keep it locked up, and you have to ask for it.
maybe.
I never bought chewing tobacco, but well, I mean, they have cigarettes, so that's tobacco, right? So they also have chewing tobacco, and sometimes it's scented chewing tobacco that make it look like it's better than just
Yeah,
regular
I think they
chewing.
do. Cigarettes, cigars, chewing tobacco, etc., are commonly available in supermarkets and grocery stores, provided the retailer complies with the federal, state, and local laws. Customers must provide a proof of age of a minimum 21.
Okay, see, so it's very easily purchased.
In India, Maharaj, there is no restriction. Anyone can buy
Yeah, chewing tobacco. Yeah,
and cigarettes as
you
well.
always going to that. Like that. I don't know why they do. Why do they do that?
I don't.
Yeah,
know.
they break the tobacco down into small
I
pieces or
think
something.
so that more nicotine comes out.
Ah, okay.
I don't know, but it's probably to get the extract out. Flavor.
Yeah. Okay.
I have one question.
Yes.
Now here it says the devotees is free from the pressure of modes of nature, material nature. So devotee
By
is
surrendering.
surrendering, free from the bad habits and
Yeah.
avoiding so many problems.
Yeah.
So, but for like for material people, if they will ask like both devotee and non-devotee, both are still getting old, getting sick,
Getting what?
getting old, getting sick. Still, the pressure is still there. They're still sleeping. They are still forced to wake up. So, how to answer that this question? Yes, we are avoiding a lot of problems, but seems like from material eyes, it's pretty much same. Other things.
If
Body.
they're a real devotee, they're happy.
No
Right.
matter.
So the fact that they're happy, and not because they're taking a drug or anything like that. I mean, other people say, "Oh, we're very happy," we smoke marijuana, and everyone's happy. But if you, without taking any drugs, you're happy because of your relationship with Krishna, and you show your happiness by dancing and chanting, right, and taking prasadam. Then you are a liberated person. Right? So what is the culture of Krishna consciousness? It's chanting, dancing, and feasting. Right? So that's what happy people do. They chant, they dance, and they feast. Right? So when it's like Thanksgiving, so everybody comes together in the family, right? And they chant, they dance, and they feast. So uh, But the devotees are doing that almost every day, or they are doing it every day. So therefore, it's nice to be a devotee because you'll always be chanting, dancing, and feasting. You know? Just like we're going to have Christmas very soon. So there'll be a lot of chanting, dancing, and feasting. Then there's going to be New Year's Eve. Then there's going to be New Year's Day with this chanting, dancing, and feasting, right? And probably, the second day of New Year's Eve, New Year's, will also do more chanting, dancing, and feasting. So that's the life of a devotee. And we don't need intoxicants to do it. We don't have to like warm up with intoxicants to get up and start dancing.
I, I asked ChatGPT, why do they crush tobacco in hand before chewing?
Yeah.
In India, crushing tobacco by hand before chewing is a common practice for several reasons. Number one, activation of flavor and aroma. Crushing the tobacco releases its essential oils, enhancing the flavor and aroma when chewed. This process makes the experience more intense and satisfying for the user. Number two, softening the tobacco. Crushing helps soften the dried tobacco leaves, making them easier to chew and release their juices. Number three, mixing with lime or tuna. In many cases, tobacco is mixed with lime paste, which is called tuna. Sometimes areca nut, supari. Crushing ensures an even distribution of lime which reacts chemically with the tobacco to release nicotine more effectively. Wow, that's cultural habit. This practice is also a traditional ritual passed down through generations. Generation.
Yeah.
It has become ingrained as part of the process of preparation for consuming tobacco.
Wow, it almost sounds traditional.
Yeah, probably. My dad did that way. I'm going to do.
Really? Your dad?
Wow, that's how probably people are thinking.
Oh. Yeah, it's terrible. But you see it a lot, especially taxi drivers in India.
Exactly, auto drivers.
Huh?
Auto drivers, yeah.
What?
Auto drivers, yeah.
Oh, stay awake. Yeah. That's why they're so dangerous. Oh, God. Okay, so now let's get our takeaways today. So again, the same point is being repeated often, especially when you're talking about understanding material nature. When the soul is under the spell of material nature and false ego, identifying his body as the self. So that point is being referred to often throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam. Identifying the body as the self, he becomes absorbed in material activities, and by the influence of false ego, he thinks that he is the proprietor of everything. So this is the way people become trapped by Maya. They identify themselves with the body. They get absorbed in material activities, and by false ego, they think that they are the proprietor of everything. Now, does a devotee believe that he is the proprietor? Well, no, because the first thing we believe is, or first thing we learn is, I am not this body. So the false ego develops by identifying with the body. So if you learn that I am not this body, then you act in that consciousness by engaging in devotional service. And if you're really serious, basically you're giving everything to Krishna or the spiritual master. So, therefore, if you look at what is a devotee or shishya, the shishya is supposed to bring everything to the spiritual master and then be satisfied with whatever the spiritual master might give back. And if he doesn't give anything, the devotee then fasts because the spiritual master did not give him anything. So that type of training of a brahmachari is very important. So when you go through that training, like I remember, when I became a devotee, I had to give up so many things that I was doing normally before, and and then that became the lifestyle, is surrendering always to uh, Krishna through service toward the spiritual master and devotees. And so now the pleasure that we were experiencing was not based on sense gratification, it was based on surrendering and engaging in unselfish activities of devotional service. I used to sleep uh, at the entrance of the toilet in this temple, uh, so that I would wake up early because people would have to step on me to get into the toilet. So I purposely would sleep there and wake up really early with the first people that would wake up, and they'd have to sort of step on me or over me to get into the bathroom. I did that on purpose so I would wake up early. Yeah. Okay, I don't do that anymore. Okay. So our takeaway is the last part of this purport. A conditioned soul may be very good and act in the mode of goodness, but still he is conditioned under the spell of material nature. A devotee, however, acts completely under the direction of the Supreme Lord, and thus his actions may not appear to be of a very high quality to the common man, but the devotee has no responsibility. Okay, so uh, uh, so even if you act in the mode of goodness, one can still be conditioned under the spell of material nature.
Actually, that is the challenge. Most of the society believes that just acting in the mode of goodness, like serving others.
Yeah, I go to church. I give $5 to every bum that's panhandling, and when they stop their car for a red light, and yeah, uh, the um, that's not real mercy. That's just helping people who don't have control of themselves to perpetuate their addictions. If you really want to help someone, then you should uh, take them in your car, drive them to the temple, and give them a lot of prasadam. And Prabhupada would always insist that new devotees should eat a lot of prasadam. And then later on, he would say, now you have to control yourself. But in the beginning, he would just fill people up with prasadam because that would wean them off a lot of bad behavior or activity. So then devotees would always be looking forward to having prasadam, 3 times a day. I know I was, and every day I would wake up and say, well, today I'm leaving, I don't want to be Krishna conscious anymore. But then I'd stay to have prasadam, and after morning prasadam, I said, well, I'll leave, before lunch prasadam. But then I said, well, let me just wait and get the lunch prasadam, and then I would say, well, since I got lunch prasadam, I may as well wait till we have dinner. So I never really got around to leaving. Although I wanted to leave, I didn't want to be Krishna conscious, but prasadam kept me going day to day, and still it's the same thing. And now we'll always look forward to having prasadam. If there was no prasadam, then I would have left. Okay, so the main takeaway today is this false sense of proprietorship can be let's see. Yeah, this false sense of proprietorship can be avoided simply by engaging oneself in devotional service under the direction of the Supreme Lord or his bona fide representative. That's a statement we should, print out and look at every day. Yeah, definitely. Because, so it says that, let's see, the false sense of proprietorship can be avoided simply by engaging oneself in devotional service under the direction of the Supreme Lord or his bona fide representative. Okay, so that's the way to free ourselves from false identification, a false sense of proprietorship. This proprietorship, it's everything is mine, but for a devotee, everything belongs to Krishna. So this everything is mine is being trapped by Maya, and everything belongs to Krishna and should be used in Krishna's service is the path to liberation from the cycle of birth and death. So it all depends on proprietorship. Now, there's different concepts of proprietorship. Like there's, for example, communism. That's a type of proprietorship. There is also there's communism, there's capitalism, there's socialism, there's also you would call atheism. They're all different ways of dealing with property or things that you can own. And there's also socialism with capitalism. There's also the concept that nothing belongs to me. So there's
That is the Shunyavad.
Yeah. So we have to decide what belongs to us. Actually, nothing belongs to us. So when we come to the conclusion that everything belongs to Krishna, then the conclusion is that, well, since everything belongs to Krishna, I should use everything in the service of Krishna according to Krishna's instruction. That means we've become educated. That's the one thing that we should learn right away, that Krishna is the proprietor of everything. And therefore, we should use everything in the service of Krishna. If we just learn that one sentence, that means that we'll be liberated in this world. That all our, let's say, activities will be free of Maya by understanding that everything belongs to Krishna, and therefore everything should be used in Krishna's service. And that's an art, how to use everything in Krishna's service. Most people don't know how to use everything in Krishna's service. They know how to use some things in Krishna's service. So how would you use marijuana in Krishna's service? Well, not by smoking it or eating it, but you could use it to make things. Huh? Yeah, make clothes and other things. So you don't have to smoke it, but you can use it in other ways. By the way, I used to have a marijuana shirt, you know. So, therefore, you have to learn how to use things correctly. So even and everything can be used in Krishna's service. Someone would say, "Well, how do you use an atomic bomb in Krishna's service?" Yeah, Prabhupada answered that once. Yes, we can blow up the atheists. I mean, he was joking, but everything can be used in Krishna's service. You just have to have the knowledge how to do it. Okay, so any questions, comments? Any questions from outside?
Any questions online? Not seeing.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, my dear devotees. Please chant Hare Krishna and be happy.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare
Hare
Hare Ram.
Ram.